Welcome to Green Building Matters, the podcast that matters for green building professionals. Learn insight in green buildings as we interview today's experts in LEED and WELL. We'll learn from their career paths, war stories, and all things green, because green building matters. And now our host, and yes, he has every LEED and WELL credential. Here's Charlie Cichetti.
Thanks for joining us on today's episode. I have a quick announcement. At GBES, we're about to roll out something very, very cool. We're proud of, we've been working on a long time, and that's a new membership community. You're going to see that January 1st. Keep an eye out because we are going to really give you access to some incredible features, including access to some of the guests I have here on my podcast, friends of mine that you could ask project questions to. You can ask those thought leadership questions. But also, if you're preparing for an exam, we've got even more insurances that you'll pass that next exam. We've got even more cliff notes to give to you if you're part of our membership community, and so much more. So stay tuned. Be on the lookout for some upcoming announcements. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the next episode of the Green Building Matters podcast. I'm your host, Charlie Cichetti, and today I'm in person in Midtown Atlanta at the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta. It's really one of my favorite buildings in all of Atlanta, and I've got two guests, so this is exciting. This is new. I've got Dan Carney, and I've got Brett Taysom with the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta. Welcome, guys.
Great to be here.
Thanks for having us.
You know, we're going to get into your LEED efforts here in a little bit, your energy efforts, and how you guys have to oversee a lot of buildings, not just one building. But I always like to rewind. Okay, where'd you get your start, going to college and that early career? Dan, can we start with you? And I believe the Ohio State University might be in your background, but tell us a little bit about where'd you grow up, where'd you go to school?
Sure. So I grew up mostly outside Boston, moved around quite a bit as a kid. After I got out of college, I worked briefly in publishing and communications, and then really got interested in architecture and design. So as you referenced, I ended up going to the Ohio State University, got a master's of architecture there. And after that, worked for about 4 years for a small architecture firm in Atlanta. Had a really great experience there, got to work on a lot of different kinds of buildings, from libraries to museums to houses. And right around the time of the Great Recession, felt like it was a good time to make a career change, and heard about the opportunity to come to the bank and work on sustainability for the bank. So I took the leap then and came over here to the Fed, and I've had a great time over the last 9 years. And we've really been able to build out our team and do a lot more than I think we were able to do when I first joined the bank.
Love it. And then, that's when Brett had joined later and has been helping with sustainability initiatives. But, Brett, tell us a little bit about your background, school in the Carolinas. Tell us about that.
Yep. So I'm from Roswell, Georgia, but I went to school in the Carolinas. Undergrad studies completed at Furman University. And that's when I started to get into sustainability. It was more the earth and environmental science side of things. That was my major there. And after Furman, my professors convinced me to go to grad school. So I ended up at College of Charleston. And that was an environmental studies program. It was really there where I started to tailor my studies as well as interests into sustainability. How can I take this past just studies in school and maybe take it the business route?
And build on that, because I always wonder, sustainability, to choose an environmental studies degree. Brett, let us know, when did you become more sustainability minded? Did you grow up around that, or just thought that would be a good degree for you? And then I'll come back on the architecture sustainability.
Yeah, I really was not that into science growing up. It wasn't until, I started taking some classes at Furman, and I took a global climate change class. And that's when I realized, wow, learning about the earth and the environment and all the interactions between, different environmental aspects of the planet, that stuff really interests me. And it wasn't until grad school when I actually started thinking about sustainability. Because when you have a science degree, it's really, you're either going to be doing research, you're going to become a professor, stay in academia, or you find a way to take it the business route. And that's kind of the way I wanted to take things. So, yeah, in grad school is really when I started to focus on sustainability.
It sounds like it hooked you, and then I think you got into some of the reporting side, the carbon side, and and then we'll catch up on the real estate in just a minute. But Dan, curious, architecture sounds like you knew you might want to be an architect, but what about sustainability too?
Yeah, it's funny as I think about this. I mean, I think the first time I heard the term LEED in terms of like the LEED accredited professional program, that was in a mechanical systems class I took in my second year of architecture school. So this was a long time ago. This was like the early 2000s. Yeah. And I remember our instructor talked about the LEED Green Building program and the LEED rating system. So that kind of piqued my interest. I don't think that it was a strong point of emphasis when we think about sustainable design. It was not a strong point of emphasis in terms of my architecture education, but it was always something I was interested in. And when I started to work in architecture, a number of the projects that we were doing had sustainable design components. And I actually took the LEED AP exam probably within a year of starting my architecture career. So that was probably around 2005, 2006. So
I was an early LEED professional. That was ahead of me. I got mine in 2008, my first one, and I've taken a lot of tests since then. But
the test was a lot easier back then. So.
Love it. Guys, along the way, were there any mentors, anyone that comes to mind that maybe opened a door for you or really had some influence on you? Brett, anyone stand out to you?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. My professors at Furman University, they're the ones that got me interested in the environment. They're the ones that, encouraged me to go to grad school. And if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have found sustainability and wouldn't have found this path. Also, my father, he was in the real estate industry. So, talking with him when I was in grad school, trying to figure out what you want to do, he started recognizing some trends in that industry when he was still working and said, I think you could tailor your degree maybe to sustainability in the built environment. There's a lot of interest there. It's growing. This was in the late 2000s, so I think it was a good time to hop on board. LEED started to really start gaining some traction then, I think, probably even a little bit before then, but that's when I took my LEED AP exam and started to focus on sustainability in the built environment, which is what my first job was. Started working with a commercial real estate investment company internally as like a sustainability analyst. So helping them figure out ways to use less energy, less water, help certify their buildings internally and just report out on those things.
I'll add one thing.
Sure.
I mean, I think Brett mentioned his father, and I would say for me, my parents certainly were a big influence. They grew, they came of age like in the 1960s and 70s, okay. So kind of that hippie generation. And I think, a big part of my childhood was, focused on not wasting materials, being energy efficient, not wasting water, those kinds of things. So I think about those, those aspects of my childhood. I think those maybe planted some seeds that then, later on kind of shaped who I was as a sustainability professional.
Love it. Yeah, I mean, that's that first influence we get is from our parents. Sometimes I'll go read a book at my boys. I've got 3 boys. They're 10, 7, and 5. Dan, I know you have kids, and one of the kids will raise their hand if I'm reading a book about recycling, and they'll rat out their parents who threw stuff in the trash that should have been recycled. It's like, so the kids are watching, mm-hmm. and that's important. So, guys, let's talk about real estate. Dan, you've been around buildings a long time. You got in early with LEED. Brett, you work for an owner-operator of commercial real estate, commercial office. And so I have to assume, of course, that's helped you guys here at the Federal Reserve Bank and all the buildings you oversee. But tell us, Dan, you've been here almost 10 years now. How was sustainability here at the Fed then? And then if you could piece together a timeline, Brett jumps on board. I know this building had earned LEED for existing buildings gold. I believe you are recertifying at the time of this recording. So just what was it like 9-10 years ago, and you've been able to grow the team? So let's talk about that for a little bit.
Sure. So I think, the biggest thing we did when I came to the bank and started working on sustainability is we really developed a sustainability plan or sustainability strategy for the bank. And if you look back at that now, I mean, this is 9 years ago, probably a lot has changed in terms of what we focus on. But I'm really proud of that effort because I think that was really the first time that we as an organization, so I worked closely with our green team, which had been around probably for a year or so at that point when I joined the bank, worked with the green team to develop the sustainability strategy. That was really the first time we thought about okay, what are all the environmental impacts that we have as an organization? I think prior to that, we had maybe thought about energy reduction and maybe, recycling. But what are all the impacts, to include energy, water, waste diversion? What about our transportation impact from all the travel we do and the commuting of employees to the building each day? What can we do around procurement or purchasing? So those were all kind of new ways to think about sustainability at that time. That process of kind of defining what our impacts were and then setting goals, I think, was very important for us, and is something that we pursued rigorously for 5 or 6 years after that. And we were then able to really grow our team. So Brett came on board and was really able to, apply a lot more attention to our sustainability program, work with our green team, really refine and enhance our communications with bank employees and how we engage with bank employees. Also was able to really take our reporting, in terms of how we presented data and reported data to management to the next level. And then we've also added another component that I think relates to sustainability, which is what we call our building performance initiative. So we have another analyst who focuses on that. And that's really more of a technology focused piece where we are looking at things like building automation system software and retro commissioning and continuous commissioning programs to really make sure that we continue to drive efficiency in our buildings and have a good training resource to work with all of our facilities team members around our district and really help them to be as efficient as possible and optimize their buildings. So I would just say that the initiative has grown from a relatively small program to something that is able, because of the people we have involved and the talent that those people have, is really able to do a lot more than we were able to do 10 years ago.
Just you 10 years ago, here's the plan, maybe a voluntary green team, and now grown several full-time team members. So it's exciting to see, because it sounds like, Dan, you had to start with almost a corporate sustainability approach. It's like, hey, what can we track? Where are we at now? What should we do? And then really a handful of years later, you were able to go for LEED for existing buildings at this property. And I know, Brett, you've got a lot of experience on LEED EB and Energy Star. And so let's talk a minute, guys. Those listening might have a complicated building. Not every building is just going to be one size fits all to LEED. You guys here at this building have a very unique building where you shred cash in the basement, take it out of circulation. You have a firing range in this building. Like, that's tough to benchmark in Energy Star sometimes. So maybe, Brett, speak to that for a minute. Prerequisites with LEED. What's been a challenge maybe here at this property?
Yeah, so at this property, like you said, it's a very unique property. It's one of those buildings where, it's an office building, but it also has some other functions because we process currency here. So how do you classify that even in Energy Star? Right. And we go with, commercial office building and compare ourselves to our peers that way. But sometimes just, thinking about how we may compare and have all these additional functions, you wonder how that maybe affects your Energy Star score. But, we got our score up to an 88 before the score change algorithm kicked in August of this year. I think everyone took a little bit of a hit from that, but with LEED, there were some other challenges. I think.
With outside air, and then you guys have some things with, even just communication we mentioned, but I think even if you were to do a waste and recycling audit, you have sensitive information here. So it's just different layers that make it a little harder than a normal LEED for existing buildings project. With Energy Star, though, for those listening that have existing buildings, property managers, chief engineers listening to the podcast, make sure you realize, you want to put your building in to best represent it. I think what you're saying is, all right, most of this building is office. We might not be getting the energy credit for the other functions. If anything, our score would be higher, but that's the closest fit we have. So sometimes these are the tools we have to work with, and that's what we've got to use. And we had a good discussion recently about, hey, some changes with Energy Star, maybe look at ARC and LEED Performance Path, and just know that there's options, but Energy Star still, for a building like this, is the default. Hey, let's benchmark there first. So obviously LEED Gold, quite the achievement here. Guys, several years ago, I think you've been tracking your recertification. You want to continue to renew this building. But for those listening that don't know the Federal Reserve System, here out of Atlanta, you actually have several other buildings in your region. Can you speak to a little bit about the kind of territory or what's the proper terminology here?
Sure. So the Atlanta office is the head office for the 6th District of the Federal Reserve. So our geographic region is basically the Southeast United States. We have 2 offices in Florida, Jacksonville and Miami. We have an office in Birmingham, and then also a office in New Orleans. And then we also have a small lease space in Nashville. So that's basically our real estate footprint. I think for us, some of the challenges that entails is just that those buildings are all different ages and different conditions. So we have, 1960s building, a couple buildings from the 80s, and then a couple buildings from the 2000s, including the Atlanta office. This building opened in 2001. So we basically, with all those offices, we try to do the best we can, given the constraints we may have in terms of the mechanical systems or infrastructure of the buildings. And we, as a district, have really, especially in the last couple of years, have really prioritized trying to make those buildings more efficient and making strategic investments in mechanical equipment to make those buildings operate as efficiently as possible.
Yeah, you always want an owner that's going to reinvest, and you have budgets. I know you guys work on a lot of data and budgets, and want to continually making the building better. So, tell us what's keeping you busy today, guys. Dan, you had mentioned some retro commissioning, some continuous commissioning, a lot on the data side, but obviously lead other sustainability efforts. What are a couple projects keeping you guys busy today?
Well, I think the big thing for us really is, thinking about that district real estate footprint for the Southeast with those 5 offices. We have a multi-year project right now to retro commission all of those buildings and then also install and upgrade the building management system software. So upgrade that so it's a common platform to give us more of like a campus environment for those 5 offices. And then I think about, in terms of the future things that get us excited, we are starting to look at building analytics software. So that would be, for your listeners, would be a software overlay that interacts with our building management system, but really helps to draw out actionable information so that the building operator who's sitting in our control room doesn't necessarily have to be scrolling through screens all the time and looking at the different plans within the building management system graphic interface. The analytics package basically will be providing actionable information and alerting us to issues or savings opportunities or optimization opportunities. So to me, is really exciting is kind of the role technology is going to play in continuing to kind of drive efficiency in our buildings.
Love it. Almost that predictive maintenance, right? Just lots of data.
Right.
Both of you guys so far on the podcast have mentioned data. So, Brett, what are some of the numbers that you look at often, and what do you do with that information?
Yeah, so every month we present an energy reduction dashboard, to our management, which basically analyzes our electricity usage this year compared to the same month of last year. We normalize for days in the billing cycle, and that's a way we can track our energy reduction based on the projects we've been doing over the past few years. So that's one of the things we look at. We also have a quarterly sustainability dashboard that we present to all the employees at the bank. Nice. So that's kind of a communications tool to let everybody at the bank know, what's going on with our sustainability program. So we report on energy on that, water use reduction, as well as our waste diversion rate.
Love it. No, it's good because those are the stakeholders also, right? All of your colleagues, all the other employees here at the building is, hopefully there's some green champions too that are asking you, hey, what's next, Brett? What's next, Dan? And I'm sure since you've been doing it for 10 years, hopefully you've built up a fan club, so to speak, internally because, I think sometimes a multi-tenant office, it's tough, but an owner-occupied property like this building, not necessarily easier, just, you're on the same team. We're not worried about leases and contracts and finger pointing. It's, hey, how can we do better? This is where we work. We want a healthier building. We want to help the cause. What can I do to help? So I'd have to assume that's a little bit easier. Now, do you guys do some Earth fairs, Earth Week events? It sounds like monthly dashboards, but, what are a couple highlights for those listening that maybe they could get inspired to mimic some of the cool stuff you're doing.
Yeah, so like Dan mentioned earlier, our organization's sustainability program extends beyond just our building footprint. So we try to engage our employees on sustainability, whether that's in their personal lives or things going on here at the bank. So a couple of the events we've been hosting the past couple of years, we do a home e-waste drive every year, where we basically allow employees to bring in old or broken electronics from home to recycle securely and responsibly here at the bank. So that provides an opportunity for employees to get rid of those items in a way that is going to be recycled. And then we do an Earth Week every year. So we usually have a guest speaker come in and talk about some type of environmental or sustainability topic. This year we had Lance Gunderson from Emory University, and he actually talked about resiliency and how that concept, ecological resiliency, how that concept has been applied to cities and city planning and things like that. We're also trying to host a couple more lunch and learns throughout the year. So we brought in the Chattahoochee River Keeper this year, Jason Olseth, to talk about the state of the Chattahoochee, water wars in the Southeast, water resources, and things like that. So that's another way we keep employees engaged. And like I mentioned earlier, the quarterly sustainability dashboards, that kind of keeps everybody plugged into our progress as an organization, reducing our own footprint.
Man, I applaud you guys for that. I think so much of it's awareness. If an employee doesn't know where to find that information, but it's something they can get really excited about, glad you guys are, staying consistent with that. It's good stuff. Yeah, so, looking back, not just here, but maybe even some previous careers, what are a couple sustainability accomplishments that stand out? Any old projects, or maybe something else here at the Fed? Did you hit a certain target? Did you get a certain win? Dan, we'll go with you. What's something you're proud of sustainability-wise?
Well, I think it ties back to some of our earlier conversation. I mean, it's really about kind of the evolution of sustainability here from, really kind of fundamental but important concepts to something that really is broad and encompasses all of the work that the bank does. I think obviously things like the LEED EBOM certification for this building and Energy Star certification, those are things that really stand out for me. But overall, I just think it's about the maturity of the organization to gradually get to a point where we can talk about sustainability in a much broader way beyond just things like facilities. One of the projects we've been working on with our green team is looking at the UN Sustainable Development Goals and really trying to identify which of those goals may be things that the bank can pursue and set targets around. So that's kind of an ongoing project for us. So that, to me, feels like something where we're really engaging sustainability at a higher level and thinking more strategically about the bank's mission and how it can support these sustainable development goals.
Those are some awesome goals, and it's great. You're right. It's not just Energy Star here, LEED here, and you had a plan. No, it's like, hey, what else is out there where we can be challenged? What should we be thinking of? So those are some great goals. I'm glad you're taking a hard look at them. Brett, how about you? Anything stand out? Just accomplishment-wise?
Well, actually, Charlie, we just recertified our building LEED Platinum. So that was a huge accomplishment for us. Yeah, so we got LEED Gold for existing buildings in 2013. So 2018, we had to recertify. And, just from some of the projects we've done over the past few years, really boosted our Energy Star score and our energy efficiency. Plus the fact that a lot of people at the bank take advantage of our alternative commuting transit subsidy program.
Nice.
So a lot of employees take MARTA to work. They live in the Midtown area. They walk to work. That really enabled us to get a lot of lead points in the Sustainable Sites credit. So we were able to push platinum, and that makes us the first platinum building in the system. And I think we're the fourth building in Atlanta to earn that achievement. So that's a pretty big deal to me in my career, being able to work on that project.
Dude, congrats, guys. Man, I'm impressed. I think, for those listening, maybe you work on some new construction, and new construction platinum is very difficult, but, existing building platinum with a building that's 18 plus years old, and it shows that, okay, gold, man, let's keep going, platinum. So I didn't know that. Congratulations. That's a big deal.
Yeah, thanks, Charlie.
Appreciate it.
You guys really need to shout that out, and I can't wait to see more of the awards you guys are going to win for that. Cool. Just a few more questions here, guys. That's exciting. All right, to both of you, you've made careers in sustainability. We just heard you've taken a very unique building to platinum on the existing building side. Congrats. Where do you think sustainability, green buildings, where's it shifted next? Where do you think, those listening, me, where should we be reading up? Dan, we'll go to you.
I guess it ties back to something I said earlier. I think for us, it's really about technology and kind of the continuing role technology can play in making our buildings better. So that's really where we have focused a lot of our time and energy in terms of, research and conferences we attend is kind of focused on building technology. So, whether it's, ways we can use our building management system software more effectively, or analytics packages that can help enhance how that BMS software works. For me, that's really, I think, where, in terms of green buildings, that's where we see things going, or at least where I see them going.
Good point. Very good point. Brett?
Yeah, I think smart buildings is really the next hot topic. I also have been reading that, future trends are showing that transparency and sustainability reporting is going to become even, I've been reading some things about sustainability reporting becoming more transparent.
Yeah.
A lot of the things I've been reading have been saying people are going to be able to access sustainability data more on demand and be able to see that data in real time. So I don't know if that's going to take hold in the real estate industry or if that's going to be seen in other industries more. But
I think it is a little bit. 5 years ago, when my wife and I bought our house in the Stone Mountain area, I wanted to know, hey, show me the power bills and the gas bills before I buy this house, And I think in some jurisdictions, they're mandating that. DeKalb County here requires you to change out your toilets if they're before 1993. So that's just a little hint of it. But I think not just residential, but commercial real estate, I think it's happening, on CoStar and some other databases. But part of the problem is a lack of education. Me, the tenant, what should I be asking for? What does this data mean? Me, the broker, what should I be giving? Is that going to be taken out of context? But I think you're right, is a lot more transparency around sustainability. New York City, I'm not sure if you know, but in 2020, they've already passed a law. When you go into a commercial building, it's going to have a letter grade for its energy efficiency, A, B, C, D. So kind of like a health score. That's pretty transparent there. If I'm walking into a building and it's got a D, I'm going to ask questions. Well, that doesn't sound good. So it's coming, but of course that's where some people push back. I love our great city of Atlanta. There was a little pushback at first with the benchmarking ordinances here, but now that's in place. If your building's over a certain size, hey, how much energy do you use? How much water do you use? We've got to put it out there. That's at least the first pass of accountability. So good stuff. Well, I know when you guys report here in Atlanta, you've got an efficient building. So good. Let's see, guys. Great careers in sustainability. What do you think your specialty or gift? If someone were to say, hey, you're really good at this. Brett, we'll go to you first. What do you think you're really good at?
I'd say I've always been good just working with people from different backgrounds. I kind of grew up having friends from different places, different levels of income, things like that. So I've just always been good working with people from different backgrounds. So I think that's helped me. A big part of sustainability is the people part, especially when you're trying to lead certify a building, working with different stakeholders. You've got vendors, you've got tenants, you've got employees, you've got, your management, and just being able to work with all those people, I think, is an important skill to have.
Yeah, it sounds like you probably look for the best in people, be present in conversations, and definitely a different, diverse group there. It's awesome. Good. Dan, how about you?
Yeah, I would echo what Brett said about relationships. I think those are incredibly important. One thing I figured out quickly when I started the bank. I mean, we're talking about a organization with 1,000 people here in Atlanta. Getting to know different people, particularly those that are stakeholders in sustainability, is really important, whether it's in facilities or procurement or human resources, all the different departments of the bank. Those relationships are really important. And to get anything done, you need, many people to be on board with it, whether it's lead certification or developing a sustainability strategy or actually achieving a reduction goal or a waste diversion goal. You need a lot of people's support to do that. So I think that's really important. And I would just add too, I think just having persistence. Organizational change is really slow sometimes, and that's true everywhere. It's not unique, to us necessarily as an organization, but I think just having that persistence that even if you get a no, 1 year, maybe things change and you circle back the next year and you're able to do things maybe you weren't able to do, when you had that conversation initially. So I've been really, pleased by the support we've gotten, from a lot of people here that, when you come to work for an organization like the Federal Reserve Bank, you don't necessarily know if people are going to be supportive of what you're doing, but I've just been so pleasantly surprised by that. And, it's truly been a team effort for us to get, what we've accomplished done. We've needed a lot of people to be on board with that. So that's been very gratifying.
So cool, man. I can tell. We've known each other for a while. I know you're doing great work here and you got the support you need. Guys, a few more rapid fire questions. Productivity tips. What helps you stay successful? Any pro tips, any routines or rituals? Brett, anything you'd recommend?
Coffee every morning.
I love it.
And one in the afternoon.
All right. You got to make sure we're caffeinated. Dan, how about you?
I just try to exercise regularly and, kind of take care of myself and my health. I think that's really important. I try to stay up to date on what's going on in the sustainability world, get some different RSS feeds from organizations like Green Biz. I mean, those are good things to kind of, stay tuned into what's going on in the world.
Yeah. So get, find the ones you like that you might actually believe and then them feed you that information. Yeah, makes sense. I'm a fan of a bucket list, guys. What's something on your bucket list? Doesn't have to be business. Could be personal, adventure, travel. We'll go back to Brett. What's one thing?
So I never really had a bucket list, but I've been trying to travel to new places recently. And one of the places I always wanted to go to was Iceland.
Cool.
And I was able to travel there last May.
Nice.
And it was just the most beautiful, gorgeous area you could visit. I mean, if I were to go on any other, nature-inspired trip after that, I think I would be a little let down. We basically toured the whole country in a van, myself and 3 others, over the course of 9 days, and it was just absolutely stunning.
Love it. All right, I might have to add that to my bucket list. Dan?
Yeah, I've always had an interest in getting into like woodworking specifically. I'd like to make a wooden boat someday. A lot of the work we do at the bank is kind of technical and abstract, and it's about ideas. But my wife kind of jokes with me. I mean, when she sees me with like power tools or hand tools, like I actually look really happy. So I think she kind of says like, oh, I've got like a hidden kind of woodworker, craftsman in me. So I'd like to someday find the bandwidth to really build that out. It may not be till retirement though. Who knows? So we'll see.
Be intentional about these things. They might happen sooner than later. But Scott Baker, who is my business partner, he went to the folk school in Western North Carolina. They have a 1 week kind of almost boot camp, and you can pick the woodworking track. So, man, that's what you need to sign up for next. He had the best time. And you come back with you've made like a side table or you've made something.
Nice. That sounds awesome. I'm definitely going to look that up.
Books. I don't know if you guys like a good hard copy or you listen to books. I do a little both, but more audible and podcast. So is there a book? Give us one you'd recommend to those listening. Brett?
I'm kind of into nonfiction when I read.
Sure.
I guess my favorite book I've read recently is The China Study. Really started changing my eating habits after reading that. So I thought that was an interesting read.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you. The China Study. I'll have to check it out. We're going to put a link in the show notes. So good. Dan?
Yeah, one of the best books I've read recently is called The Desert and the Sea. It's by Michael Scott Moore. He's actually a journalist who's done a lot of reporting in conflict zones and all over the world. But he was actually kidnapped by Somali pirates in the early 2000s, and he was held captive for almost 3 years both on boats and also in the desert of Somalia. And the book is a really, despite the topic, is surprisingly funny. And I mean, he has a lot of good perspective and kind of about his situation and a lot of sensitivity to kind of how piracy, became a thing in Somalia and what the kind of geopolitical, levers were that kind of created that situation. So it's talks a lot about his experience in captivity, how he kind of was able to maintain his faith at times, and at other times he lost faith. And ultimately, the book has a happy ending, or as happy as happy of an ending as you can have given his situation. But it's just a really interesting read, and of kind of one person's kind of survival of a pretty desperate situation at times.
It's intense.
So,
Two great books, guys. Thanks. I'll put them in the notes for everybody. Last question. You two have become sustainability champions here. Love the work you're doing here at the Fed and all your other properties. But any words of encouragement, those maybe just now jumping into the green building movement, Dan?
I would say really my advice would be if you end up working or interning, in an organization working on sustainability initiatives, try to do more listening than talking. I think oftentimes, our instinct is to kind of come in as an expert and kind of say, you need to do this, this, and this. Here's this best practice. But I think, engaging the organization in, kind of educating people about what sustainability is, but then let your stakeholders kind of guide the conversation about what the environmental impacts are and what are the opportunities for saving. I think that's key. So really, the biggest thing is like learning how to kind of facilitate those conversations and bring people to the table, and treat them with respect so that you can kind of, as a group, you can kind of pursue those goals. I think that's really important.
Good advice. Thank you.
Yeah, to build off of what Dan said, listen, but also, don't be afraid to make suggestions. Definitely find out who the key stakeholders are in your organization. Let them know what you're interested in. Let them know about things you think can make a difference and have an impact operationally, maybe improve the bottom line while affecting the company's environmental impact as well. I think those are good conversations to have.
Cool. Great advice, guys. For those listening, if you're ever in Midtown Atlanta, you can't miss this building. It's got a bunch of white Georgia marble on it, and they have the Money Museum. It's open to the public, I believe, Monday through Saturday to come see currency history here in the United States. But, guys, congrats, Lead DB Platinum. Thanks for everything you're doing to the industry, and thanks for being on the podcast.
Thanks, Charlie.
Thanks, Charlie.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Green Building Matters podcast. At gbes.com, our mission is to advance the green building movement through best-in-class education and encouragement. Remember, you can go to gbes.com/podcast for any notes and links that we mentioned in today's episode, and you can actually see the other episodes that have already been recorded with our amazing guests. Please tell your friends about this podcast. Tell your colleagues. And if you really enjoyed it, leave a positive review on iTunes. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on next week's episode.